Hey guys, we're Ali and Gary with Roll With Us DMs, professional game masters with over 17 years of experience that also love to go on some side quests with our friends, which you can see here on our channel.
Thank you for checking out our videos. If you haven't already, you should quest down to the subscription button and strike the notification bell so you never miss our content.
Our links are in the description below.
Consider becoming a channel member to access epic perks, including playing in one of our games. Now, on with the video.
Hello guys, I am taking my short rest for the day. I'm going to be talking about a new game system that I am very excited about. So, the system is called DC20 RPG. It's still an alpha. It is created by the Dungeon Coach, Alan. The website is thedungeoncoach.com/pages/DC20. And I'm just going to hop out of the library and over to my screen share. And the first thing that I wanted to say about the game is that it is still an alpha. It's currently alpha 0.6, and to me, DC20 RPG seems like the perfect blend of D&D 5e and Pathfinder 2e. So I just need a little bit to explain what I mean by that. But before I do, if you remember from my previous video, my first short rest, I said that I thought if D&D and Pathfinder had a baby, it would be perfect, because both systems do certain things very well, and I feel like DC20 takes the best parts of Pathfinder 2e, the best parts of D&D 5e, and blends it together into a very engaging system. So one of the things that DC20 uses from 5th edition is advantage and disadvantage. But one complaint that people have had about advantage and disadvantage in 5th edition is you could have 3 instances of advantage and 1 instance of disadvantage, and they cancel each other out completely. So you could have advantage because you have somebody flanked, you could have advantage because they're blind, you could have advantage because they're restrained, and you have disadvantage because they dodge. And that disadvantage removes all of your advantage. So the one thing that DC20 does is it allows advantage and disadvantage to stack. Stacking advantage and disadvantage. So if you had, in that case, those 3 instances of advantage and then 1 instance of disadvantage, the 1 instance of disadvantage would just counteract one of the instances of advantage, and you would have advantage 2, meaning that you would roll 3 d20s and take the higher of those results. Disadvantage stacks the same way. If it was reversed and you had 3 instances of disadvantage and 1 instance of advantage, you would lose one of the disadvantages because of your advantage, and you'd still have 2 instances of disadvantage. So you would be rolling 3 d20s and taking the lowest. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was how DC20 keeps many of the weapon traits the same from 5th edition. Let me see if I can find a weapon for an example. A battle axe is versatile, and versatile, just like in 5th edition, is you can swing it one-handed or two-handed. The damage is listed here, and another neat thing, I'm just going to jump ahead in my notes because there's no sense in coming back to this later. But damage is static, which controls the math much better, and it also speeds up gameplay. So this battle axe would deal 2 damage if you swing it with one hand, and it would deal 3 damage if you swing it with 2 hands. By just having a flat damage number, you're not having to look for dice to roll for damage. You're not having to calculate the damage you hit, you deal 2. If you swing it with 2 hands, you deal 3. And then the game has mechanics for beating an armor class or a DC by 5 or more for most things. Just gonna have me jumping around here a bit, but I feel like it's relevant while I'm on it. Just like in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, you have like beating an armor class by 10 is a critical hit. In DC20, if you beat an armor class by 5 or more, it's a heavy hit, and it deals an extra point of damage. If you beat an armor class by another 5, so by 10, it's a brutal hit, and it deals another extra point of damage. And then if you crit by rolling a 20, it deals an additional 2 damage. So if you had plus 4 to hit, for example, and you rolled a 20, that would be a 24. And if the armor class that you were going for was 10, you would heavy hit, brutal hit, and critical hit. So it would be, in this case, with that battle axe, if you were swinging it two-handed, it would be the 3 damage, plus 1 for the heavy hit, plus 1 for the brutal hit, plus 2 for the crit is 7 damage. So you can get some really good damage still despite not actually rolling dice. The plus 5, I think, is another thing that it kind of takes from Pathfinder then, in that regard, where you have 10 or more is a critical, 10 or less is a critical failure. But I think this is more dynamic because it's easier to beat something by 5 than it is to beat it by 10. So you get like incremental benefits for beating things by 5 or in increments of 5. The other thing I was going to point out is the ranges. So this is for like throwing a club. I have it highlighted here. Throwing a club is normal range 10 squares and long range 20 squares. So it works just like in 5th edition. If you throw it within the normal range, it's a normal attack, and if you throw the long range 20 squares, then it's at disadvantage. Another thing that's important to note is that DC20 uses squares instead of feet when it's calculating distances for movement, for range increments. And I think the benefit to it is it's simpler. You just count squares instead of having to convert feet into squares. And it actually harkens back to 4th edition, which also used squares rather than using feet. So 1 sec while I skip to the next page. Link to the wrong page, I'm sorry. I was going to talk about the classes, which are very similar to the ones that are in 5th edition currently. All the classes from there are present here, with the exception of the Artificer, but with the inclusion of 2 new classes, the Scion and the Warlord. Scion doing psionic type abilities, telekinetics. And then the Warlord was actually a class in 4th edition. So I guess another advantage that I see to this system is it not just pulls from the best things from 5th edition, but it also pulls a lot of the good things that 4th edition did, and then takes a little bit from Pathfinder 2e and crams it together into what just seems like, to me, that such a cool system. Everything is just the best of everything in one system. I feel like I was gonna talk about this later more, but okay. So I built a druid for the game that I'm running tonight. Somebody wanted to play a druid, and their level 1 class feature is this druid grove. So at level 1, a druid in this system is literally working the land to their advantage to do various things, like, well, first you create a grove, and then down here you can use wild growth in a grove space to heal somebody. So you're literally using the land to heal people, which feels very thematic for a druid. And the other thing that you could do is grasping vines, which would restrain people or grapple them. Again, using the land thematically, which feels very druid-like. And the person who's playing the druid said that he was excited because there was a system that finally was brave enough to give the druid wild shape at level 1. So they have wild form. It sounds really cool from what I've read about it. You get to kind of custom build your own wild shape by picking and choosing what abilities you want. The way I understand it, you get 2 choices from the beast list that you can choose, and if you spend extra mana, extra magic points, you can get more traits that you can use to enhance and customize the beast to be exactly what you want. I feel like this strikes not just the perfect balance, because 5th edition's wild shapes are horribly off balanced for the Moon Druid, for example. You go from, at level 1, being able to compete with level 5 characters by being a bear, to those wild shapes eventually falling off and being less powerful until you get the ability to transform into elementals. I think 11th level? Not 100% on that one, but this is balanced, and it scales with you, because the more mana that you have to spend to put into your transformation, the better things you can turn into. But every time you turn into them, it's like your own custom beast, which just sounds so cool. I built a monk. It was the first character that I built, and the monk gets a lot of very similar abilities, like Flurry of Blows. And the way that Flurry of Blows works in the system is brilliant, really. The damage of your unarmed strikes increases by 1. So normally an unarmed strike would only deal 1 damage, but a monk's going to be able to deal 2 damage with it, so keeping up with the rest of the martials. And your attack checks made as part of an unarmed strike ignore the multiple check penalty, up to 4 attacks. So yeah, this has me jumping all over the place, but I think this is a good point to talk about the action economy and the multiple attack penalty for this game. So Pathfinder has an upgrade to 5th edition, in my opinion, in its action economy. Pathfinder gives you 3 actions and a reaction. them off camera. 3 actions and a reaction every turn. Instead of 5th edition's action, bonus action, move, free interact. The ability to customize your turn more by having 3 actions in Pathfinder is really cool. One of my favorite things with Pathfinder. And you do a bonus action second attack in DC20. So the way that DC20 works is that instead of following 5th edition's action economy, it takes Pathfinder's multiple action economy and, in my opinion, enhances it like in immeasurable ways. For one, instead of 3 actions, you have 4. And the system calls them action points rather than just actions because they're spent as a resource from the end of your turn when you get them back and until the end of your turn. So an interesting distinction is that unlike in most games where you get your actions and reactions at the beginning of your turn, in this system you get them at the end of your turn. This does some very interesting things because you know, I'm going to actually bring us back over to the library. So, the interesting things that this does by having the reactions, by having it where you get your 4 actions at the end of your turn, you always have 4 actions that you can spend from the end of your turn through your turn. And the system allows you to use as many reactions as you have action points for. So if somebody triggers an opportunity attack, you can spend one of your actions and make an opportunity attack. If somebody attacks you and you want to use a maneuver to block with your shield, you can do that. When it comes back to your turn, though, if you've done those 2 things, you would only have 2 actions left. So it's very flexible in that regard. You can, spend a whole bunch of reactions. If it comes back around, you have 4 actions to use on your turn. And the benefit here is that your reaction is often lost if you don't use it. And the same thing happens in 5th edition. If you have a bonus action, you don't use it, or a movement, you don't use it. This really just opens it up in a way that I have never seen before. So to answer Allie's question, I'm going to say you have the 4 actions and you can attack. And you can attack and attack and attack. So you could attack 4 times if you wanted. Borrowing from Pathfinder 2E's multiple attack penalty, in Pathfinder, just to say how that is, if you attack the first time, it's at your full bonus. Your second attack is at a -5 penalty, unless it's an agile weapon, and then it's -4. And if you attack a third time, it's at -10 or -8 if you're using an agile weapon. For this system, again, borrowing from D&D, from 5th edition, your second check of any type on a turn is at disadvantage. Your third check of any kind on the same turn, of the same kind on a turn, is at disadvantage 2. So then you would be rolling the 3 dice, 3 D20s, and taking the lowest. This system does have a way to balance that, and you could have a very similar turn to 5th edition where you can spend an action to move, spend an action to attack, that's at the full bonus, and then you can spend an action to give yourself advantage, because that's one of the actions that you can do, is to give yourself advantage, and then use your 4th action to attack a second time with the full bonus. And that would feel very similar to a 5th level character in 5th edition, with extra attack making 2 attacks. I think that probably answers Allie's question, although there is a really cool thing that I wanted to point out, and that's dual wielding. To me, dual wielding in this game is really cool. And now that I've explained how the multiple attack penalty works for this game, when I explain the dual wielding rules, it will also sound, it'll make sense why it's good. So if you attack with one weapon in one hand, you can make a second attack on that same turn with a weapon in the other hand, and you don't apply that disadvantage that you would normally apply. So you automatically benefit from 2-weapon fighting in a way that you really, it's not as clean in 5th edition, I don't think. This is really clean. You have 2 weapons, you have 4 actions. You want to attack, you attack with both weapons, no disadvantage. It almost feels like one clean action. And yeah, the monk benefits in the same way as what I was saying before too. He doesn't take multiple attack penalties on his attack, so he can attack 4 times in one turn without, as long as they're unarmed strikes, without taking a multiple attack penalty, which is unlike what the other classes can do. One more really cool thing with dual wielding is you can attack with shields, which is nothing new for people with a Pathfinder background, because shields can be weapons in Pathfinder. But the really cool thing is that if you have a weapon in one hand and a shield in the other, you can dual wield. You can make an attack with the weapon in your hand and then make that second attack with the shield, and you don't have that multiple attack penalty for the attack with the shield. Shield doesn't do that much damage, 1 damage, but it's another attack with no disadvantage, and you have the benefit of wielding a shield. So, and I should say, the shields work the same as in 5th edition, which I think is another huge benefit to the system, is just how similar it is to 5th edition. Shields work the same, +2 to armor class, if it's a full shield, not like a buckler. But it does give a buckler option for a +1. Like I've already said, disadvantage, advantage, the range increments, the weapon properties are almost all the same. So I feel like you could put a character in front of somebody who's familiar with 5th edition and they can play this game, which is brilliant. But instead of being a carbon copy of 5th edition, it takes the best parts, and the best parts from Pathfinder, and the best parts from 4th edition, one system that's just perfectly tuned. So looking at my notes, I was going to talk about minor actions, but you know what? I'm going to come back to that in a second, because I want to talk a little bit more about the monk. So transition back over to the screen share. So that was Flurry of Blows. The next thing is Patient Defense, which is, if you're familiar with 5th edition, it's another term that would sound familiar. And what it does in here, well, let me start with what it does in 5th edition, is it lets you take dodge as a bonus action. This lets you calculate your armor class in an unarmored way for your physical defense, like your basic armor class, and then your mental defense, which is your fortitude against spells and things. Like holy, unholy, your mental fortitude. But most people don't get... Oh, I know what my problem is. I can't see the... I need to have Twitch up so that I can read the chat, because I can't read the chat. That might be a thing for next time. So So, similar name, instead of letting you dodge as a bonus action, which is irrelevant in the system, and I'll explain why a little bit later, this does let you calculate your armor class and your mental defense in a way that is unique to the monk and really strong. In comparison to the other characters that I built for this game that I'm going to run later, the monk's defenses are like very good. Step of the Wind, another familiar term from 5th edition. Well, sorry to hear that, Zanny. Hang in there, buddy. Step of the Wind. While you aren't wearing armor, which you pretty much would not be as a monk, your speed and jump distance increase by 1. So, probably as a balancing thing, in 5th edition most characters have a 30-foot move speed, which equates to 6 squares. In Pathfinder 2e, in order to balance having 3 actions, most characters start with 25-foot movement speed, which is only 5 squares. This game, most characters have a movement speed of 4 squares, or 20 feet, but you have 4 actions. So if you were to move 4 times, that's 16 squares, or 80 feet in a turn. So 80. I don't know. It's a lot. Anyway, I'm pretty sure 80. I'm pretty sure my math is right on that. But so the monk gets an extra square movement. So they have 5, where most people only have 4. And another cool thing, you can move a number of spaces equal to your jump distance along vertical surfaces and across liquids without falling during your move. So your jump distance is your agility score, which is your dexterity. In this case, it could be up to 4. And the really cool thing with this being a first level feature, in 5th edition you don't get this ability until like 9th level as a monk. So being able to do this from level 1 is really cool. And you can use your prime ability instead of agility to determine your jump distance and the damage you take from falling. So actually, that was another point, is for this system, I'm going to actually switch over to the character sheet. No, that's not the character sheet. There's the character sheet. So, you have 4 abilities. I feel like I'm all over the place, but I'm just so excited about this game. So you have Might, you have Agility. Might is Strength, Agility is Dexterity, essentially. Charisma is Charisma, and Intelligence is like a combination of Intelligence and Wisdom. So, you know what I just realized? I'm not wearing it, and I don't know if you guys can even hear me. So, I don't know if that's any better. I might have just botched this entire video. I guess we're going to find out, because I wasn't prepared totally, and I didn't put this on. Anyway. Let's see. Yeah, so when you build your character, you get a standard array typically. It's 3, which is equivalent to a 16, but the game simplifies everything. So instead of, just like Pathfinder 2e's remaster, where it doesn't use mega feedback. Okay. What 5th edition, what Pathfinder 2e does in the remaster is it just uses the ability bonuses. So instead of having like an 18, it's plus 4. Instead of having a 12, it's plus 1. So when I say these numbers, they're not low, really, when you think about it in terms of D&D. So you get a 3, a plus 3, you get a plus 1, you get a 0, and you get a negative 2. And then you get 2 points that you can use to smooth out your scores, but you can't go higher than a 3. So I don't really want to go too much into character creation because I could spend an entire hour just going over this character sheet. But what I will say is that you could build a monk that doesn't have agility as its primary stat because of the way that the game uses this up here, the prime ability. Because the prime ability is your highest ability modifier, which is going to be 3, you're guaranteed to have a prime of 3. So you could have a 3 in intelligence and be an intelligence-based monk, and you could even have a -1 agility. And when I go back over here to the monk, since you can use your prime instead of your agility to determine your jump distance and the damage you take from falling, you're automatically getting your highest bonus for your jump and for to reduce the damage you take from falling. That automatically increases the usefulness of this ability to move across liquids and vertical surfaces, which is so cool because you can build your monk however you want and you're still a good monk, which to me, mind blown. Like, you want to be a charisma based monk and be really good at charisma and be the face of the party, you're not held back in this system by the being pigeonholed into I need to take these stats in order to be good at my class. You can be however you want to be, and your character will still be good in the class that they are. Just like in Pathfinder 2e, the monks get stances. I really liked the monk that I built. I took Bear Stance. You get to pick 2. This is +1 damage when you score a heavy, brutal, or critical hit with an unarmed strike. So you're going to deal more damage if you can get these big hits. And when you miss an attack with an unarmed strike, you gain advantage on the next unarmed strike you make before the end of your turn. So if you attack and you miss, then your next attack is at advantage. With advantage, you have a better chance of getting these heavy, brutal, and critical hits. So it kind of like feeds into itself. And the mental image for me is you have a monk in the stance of a bear, and he's just like making these vicious unarmed bear type strikes that, like, if he misses, then he's just like even madder and like even more likely to damage you. And I took Scorpion's Dance. When a creature enters your melee range, you can make an opportunity attack against them with an unarmed strike, so you don't have to wait for them to trigger an opportunity attack by leaving your space, although they also trigger on standing up from prone, and I think it's pretty much everything that you would trigger for in 4th edition, because opportunity attacks are not as easy to trigger in 5th edition as they were in 4th edition, but this gives you kind of that Polearm Master where you can, from 5th edition, where you can get an opportunity attack when something enters your reach, and also when you make an unarmed strike, you could spend an extra action to deal +1 damage and force the target to make a save, and then they're impaired, so they have disadvantage on physical checks before the end of your next turn. So if they come into your reach, you can hit them with an opportunity attack, and then you can deal extra damage on that, and almost like the Scorpion Sting, dealing that like debilitating condition. Warlocks are cool. I didn't build a warlock, but I will point out that the warlock does have like the need to make sacrifice their health to enhance their powers, so they're like doing almost like blood magic to appease their patron for benefits, which sounds really cool. Pact boons would be familiar to anybody who's played 5th edition, where you get, so they got like pact weapon, pact armor, pact cantrip, pact familiar. Again, I didn't build one, so I don't really know too much about them, but it just sounded really flavorful. And then warlords, they can give up their actions, so there's this commander's call, where they can spend an action point and a stamina point to command a creature that they can see within 5 spaces that can also see or hear them, and they can immediately take one of the following actions for free. They can attack. The creature makes an attack with advantage. They can't spend anything to buff that attack. It's just they make an attack, but they're making the attack at advantage. So to me, it feels like the warlord wants to be standing back and commanding their allies to do these different things, like attack, dodge. So yeah, this is tough to go over because it's so much content, and it has me like wanting to jump around. So I'm just going to jump around a little bit, I think. The actions are very similar to 5th edition in the sense that you have dodge, you have disengage. For one action you can dodge, for one action you can disengage. And as I said before about the monk, like being able to take dodge as a bonus action in 5th edition was irrelevant when you can just take dodge as an action and you have 4 actions, so one action on dodge is not that big of a deal. The thing is that a base dodge is only disadvantage against the next attack. If you spend a second action, you can take what's called full dodge, and then it's like the 5th edition dodge. The cool thing is that dodge usually feels bad in 5th edition because you have to basically give up everything that you can do for the turn to dodge. But in the system, even if you use 2 actions to dodge, you still have an action to move and you still have an action to attack, or 2 actions to move and 2 actions to do a full dodge. But the fact that you have that flexibility and you're not just like stuck doing like a 2 action full dodge, and you can just like either you have 1 action left and you don't know what to do with it and you're like, okay, I'm going to dodge because I want to have at least 1 attack have disadvantage, or if you want to use your other 3 actions for something, and then it's just very flexible. And then disengage works in a similar way, where for 1 action you can disengage, and the next time that you would trigger an opportunity attack, you don't trigger it. Or you can take 2 actions for full disengage, which then you don't trigger opportunity attacks, I think, until the beginning of your next turn. So if you only have 1 enemy, you're only in 1 enemy's reach and you're only going to provoke 1 person, you could attack them. You could take the single disengage and then move if you wanted. You could give yourself advantage with your first action, attack with advantage, 1 action disengage and move. So the point that I was making, though, is that the warlord here is really powerful in that rather than it taking 2 actions for somebody else to take full dodge, the warlord can spend 1 action point, a stamina point, and grant somebody full dodge for 1 of their actions instead of 2 of the actual character's actions. He can command them to move. But the other thing that's really cool is stamina, and it was in my notes. But let me look at the warlord here for a second. Warlord stamina. You regain 1 stamina point each time you grant a creature a help die. So every time that you take the help action with a warlord, you regain your stamina point. So first level characters have 1 stamina point. Marshals, the spellcasters get mana, and they don't get stamina unless it's a hybrid class like a paladin. But you regain the stamina in different ways. But the really cool thing with stamina in the system is it helps foster the gameplay that you would expect from the classes. So if you're a warlord, you could spend an action and a stamina point to order one of your teammates to attack. They attack with advantage, and then the warlord can use the help action and regain that stamina point. So that would be their second action. They could then spend that stamina point in another action to tell somebody to dodge, tell one of their allies to dodge, and if they gave the help action again for their fourth action, they could regain that stamina point. But when you think of a warlord, they're like, marshaling their troops around, or their comrades, trying to help them. So it's fitting that the warlord would regain their stamina from helping. So to back up to the monk, because this is another aspect of the monk that I think is really cool. The paladin gets stamina too, so I could actually talk about the paladin stamina. But they regain a stamina point when they spend magic to restore a creature's hit points, including themselves, or a creature spends mana to restore hit points to you, or you deal divine damage to a creature with like Divine Smite, which again, you get at first level in this system instead of second level in 5th edition. So you do paladin type things and you regain your stamina that fuels your cool abilities that you can do. But it kind of fosters you, like you benefit from being a paladin, which is really cool, I think. The monk, let's see. Monk stamina. You regain a stamina when the following things happens. Once per round, when you hit a creature with an unarmed strike, you don't regain a stamina points in this way if you spend stamina on the attack. So you can spend your stamina points to do maneuvers. So all of the marshals pretty much have like battle master maneuver type things that they can do by spending stamina points. As well as the class itself might have some stamina based abilities. But what's really cool about this is the monk wants to hit things with unarmed strikes, and they're very good at it. So you're going to get your stamina back very easily with this ability. Only once per turn, but still pretty cool. And once per round when an attack misses you. So you could end your turn with no stamina, but if an attack misses you, which you have a very good armor class as a monk, you're likely going to get your stamina back. And what is a monk? Pretty dodgy, able to dodge out of the way of things. So it oozes flavor to me, I think. So now my notes are kind of all over the place, but let me see. I talked about the 4-action economy. I talked about reactions not being limited to 1 per round. I talked about disengaging and dodging. The help action. So the way that the help action works in DC20 is a little bit different than in 5th edition. Curious about playing one, perhaps. DC20, yeah. So the help action in DC20 is you tell like what you're doing to help, just like in 5th edition, and spend an action, and you grant them a D8 that they can add to their next check. And if you give the if you give the help action multiple times on the same turn, the die decays. it decays. So it goes from a D8 to the first person that you help, to a D6 the second person that you help, to a D4 for the third person that you help in the same turn. And it makes sense because the first person that you help, you're going to be able to give them the full, your full attention. But if you try to help multiple people, you're going to be spread too thin and you're not going to be as effective. I talked about the multiple attack penalty and how you got stacking disadvantage for taking the same check multiple times. And the cool thing with the multiple attack penalty for this system, which is very similar to Pathfinder in a lot of ways, is that it's the same check done multiple times. Now in Pathfinder, it's usually a multiple attack penalty, and it applies to things that have the attack trait only. But it does include not just attacking, but grappling and acrobatics to get out of grapples. But for this system, a spell check is its own check. So if you cast 2 spells in a turn, your second spell that turn is going to be potentially with disadvantage to make the spell check. But again, you could always spend 1 extra action to give yourself advantage and wash out the disadvantage. But it kind of encourages you to do multiple things in a turn. But the nice thing is, so in Pathfinder, if you cast a spell that uses a saving throw, then you can attack without incurring the multiple attack penalty. In this game, in Pathfinder, let's just finish with that. If you cast a spell that has an attack roll and then make an attack, you will have the multiple attack penalty on the attack roll because that spell had the attack trait. For this system, the spell check, as far as I'm aware, is completely separate. It's a different kind of check than attacking. So you could cast a spell and still bonk somebody with a staff, full bonus on both, as far as I'm aware. But when I run it tonight, that's how I'll run it. If I'm wrong, I don't know if Alan's going to end up seeing this, Dungeon Coach, but if you do, you can let me know. Or if anybody else knows, they can let me know. Same thing goes with grappling, though, because it's a skill check. Unlike in Pathfinder, where if you attempt to grapple somebody or get out of a grapple, then you incur the multiple attack penalty, and then your next attack is at disadvantage, or not disadvantage, it would be -5. In this, you would not have disadvantage on the attack because the grapple is a skill check and the attack is an attack check. So since they're two different kinds of checks, let's see. I'm running out of time on the short rest, and I could talk about this game for probably 3 hours and not cover everything that I want to cover. So I have, I already talked about that. So ancestries, right. The ancestries are really cool. What I like is they give you the default traits. So if you wanted to play a human, it tells you, okay, take this, and you'll be a human. But if you want, you can allow these to be swapped. So you get 5 points that you can use. Again, I would have to take a whole hour just talking about character creation. Not that it takes me an hour to make a character anymore. It is actually very intuitive once you understand how to fill in the sheet. But there's just so many really interesting things that I could talk about with the character sheet. But you get 5 points, so you see that attribute increase costs 2, resilience costs 2, human resolve costs 1. I could swap out human resolve for human determination or trade expertise. You could also take a -1 to an attribute decrease, and then it would give you an extra point to spend up here. So you could give yourself negatives to like really buff yourself with extra stuff, extra human abilities. And then of course this is just for human. Elves have their own things, but again, if you wanted to play an elf, you could just like, here's your stock elf. For the game I'm running tonight, I kept everybody just with the stock stuff because, well, first I have all the materials, so, and I had to build the characters, and I wasn't gonna like go through trying to tell people about all these things. At some point, maybe I will take the time to do that, but you know, I threw the game together, not threw the game together, but threw the session together quick. So, Dwarf, you know, has its stock stuff, but it makes them, they do feel distinct and different, and they feel like the ancestries that they are, which is cool, I think. Halflings, gnomes, orcs, dragonborn, giantborn, yeah, angelborn, so like Azimir, fiendborn, like tieflings, and beastborn, which is really cool. I'm pretty sure I watched a live play of Alan the Dungeon Coach running a game for Chris from Train Monk's Temple, Bob the World Builder, DM Layer, Luke from DM Layer, and there was somebody else. Sorry, I don't remember who the other person was, but I'm pretty sure that Treant Monk used the Beastborn. You build your own like bestial heritage, and he built a Treant, which is like mind blowing. Again, that you could build pretty much any race, anything you want. I'm sure within reason, but and then when I was talking about the druid before, this is how you would build your druid. You would pick what abilities you want for the beast that you wild shape into. So you only get 2. So like, you know, if you wanted charge, that would be your 2. If you wanted web walk, spider climb, jumping, if you wanted to sense like dark vision. Okay. What we got here? Always wanted to play a monk. Yeah, I think the monk in this is like super cool. And again, I keep coming back to it, but the fact that you can build your monk however you want. If you want to be like a strength-based monk, you can do that, and you'll still be just as good as any other monk because of the concept of the prime ability. It sounds kind of like strange at first, but the fact that the game has your highest stat be what that's the stat that all of your key things are based around is really cool, because it doesn't, like, you could build the character that you want. Let's see. I already talked about that, and I just was talking again about the prime ability, just going over my notes and seeing if I had anything else. So just read the way that I have it written out here. Let's see. Because attacks and spell checks, etc. use the prime ability, you can build intelligence-based barbarians, might-based wizards, agility-based clerics, and charisma-based fighters. The 4 abilities impact skills and saves, but you will always be competent in your class's main thing it wants to do. This opens up character creation in ways that I have only scratched the surface. The way that initiative is handled in this system is very dynamic as well. Essentially, the encounter has an initiative DC. When initiative is going to be called for, the DM would ask what everybody's doing at that point in time. Just like in Pathfinder 2E, your initiative roll is based on whatever you were doing. So if you were doing something athletics, then you would roll athletics and so on. And the goal is for somebody in the party to beat the encounter DC. If the encounter DC is beaten, then the players go first, and if the encounter DC is not beaten, then the monsters go first. And the way it works, let's say the players go first. Let's see, I've got Zanny, I've got Allie, I've got Cheshire Watcher. Let's say that you guys rolled initiative, and Zanny beat the encounter DC, and the other two did not. Zanny would go first, and then I would insert a monster next. Whichever monster made sense to insert at that point, and then that monster is locked into the initiative at that point. Then the next player would go, and then I would insert another monster whichever monster made sense to add at that point. Yes, painful for you, because if I pick a monster that's very dangerous, it could hurt. But the really cool thing is that it allows the Dungeon Master to be dynamic with adding the monsters to the encounter, and then once they're added, they're locked into that spot. But like, if the first thing that Zanny does is attack a guard, it's likely I'm going to have that guard go next, because that's who Zanny interacted with, and then they'll be locked into that spot going forward. 3 minutes. Wow, this short rest went fast. I've been talking so much I didn't even drink my beer. Crazy. The game uses smaller numbers, so you saw that the damages are smaller, hit points are lower. It doesn't suffer from what I'm going to call the Yu-Gi-Oh effect, where in comparison, like, Magic the Gathering uses smaller numbers, with like 20 usually being the highest for things, and Yu-Gi-Oh uses numbers in the thousands and tens of thousands, and so in Magic you might have like an 8-8, and in Yu-Gi-Oh you'd have like a 12,000 or something. This game just uses smaller math, which makes it faster. But your bonus to attack at level 1 is +4 in most cases. The armor classes are lower, the damage is lower, the hit points are lower, but I feel like Alan from Dungeon Coach has done a great job controlling the math to provide a very balanced, stable system. I should emphasize again that the game is an alpha. The beta goes live with the Kickstarter on June 4th, I believe it is, and I am highly excited for that. I will definitely be backing this game. In fact, one thing that I'm interested in doing, especially if this goes well tonight, is to possibly look into converting something 5th edition, or I'll definitely be looking forward to playing more of this if the game goes as well as I'm expecting that it will tonight. Time. I just can never keep a short rest to an hour. I'm gonna get through the rest of my notes, so I'm gonna go over a little bit. The dying mechanics are way better. So in 5th edition, is notorious for having bad dying conditions. I know people have looked at ways to tweak it to make it better. So what this game does is what's called Death Store, which I can actually link the page. When you reduce to 0 hit points or lower, you suffer the following effects. You gain a level of exhaustion, which I believe in this game is -1 to everything. I'd have to double check that. I'm not 100% actually. You have 1 action point instead of 4. But the cool thing is, unlike in D&D and Pathfinder where you're unconscious and you can't act at all, and then you're basically just sitting there waiting a half an hour for your turn to come around so that you can roll a d20 and find out if you die or not, you actually get a turn. You actually get an action. You could spend it on a reaction, I believe, unless it says that you can't. No, as far as I can tell, you could still use the reaction. You can't concentrate, so which is another thing that is very similar to 5th edition. Concentration, I forgot to mention that. But it works the same. The DC on a concentration check, if you take damage, is 10 or double the damage, whichever's higher. Yeah, so it's exactly the same mechanic. The save is not based on Constitution. As you saw, there was no Constitution stat on that sheet. Instead, it's a mental save, so it would be whichever is the highest of your 2 mental stats, intelligence or charisma. You would get to use the highest to make that concentration check. Death save, at the end of your turn, you make a death save. Works exactly like in 5th edition in the sense that you roll a d20, flat check, you need a 10 or better. The failure, instead of failing a death save and dying at 3 failed death saves, you take 1 point of what they have termed true damage, which you take that damage, and unlike in 5th edition where you can't go into negatives, you just stay at 0. This, you will actually go negative, and you die at negative your prime modifier in hit points. So you would die at level 1 at negative 3 hit points. The monk that I build is a human and dies at dying 4, or well, minus 4 hit points. But it is very deadly in that regard. If you're at 1 hit point, you want to be healed. Unlike in 5th edition where you just yo-yo. Because if you're at 1 hit point and somebody hits you for 4 damage, you're dead. You're at negative 3, you're dead. So, yeah, you want to be healed. You don't no yo-yos like in 5th edition. Resistance and vulnerability, I think, is again a perfect blend of Pathfinder and 5th edition. In 5th edition, resistance is you take half damage. Vulnerability is you take double damage. In Pathfinder, they don't do that, half and double. It's resistance and a number, vulnerable and a number, and if you take an instance of that damage, it's either reduced by that amount, so like resistance bludgeoning 3, if you took bludgeoning damage you would reduce it by 3. This is how Pathfinder handles it. If it was vulnerable 5 fire, if you took 1 point of fire damage you would take an additional 5 points of fire damage. So this game uses that mechanic as well. So you could have resistance half, which is the 5th edition version of using resistance, or it could be resistance X, resistance in a number, and then you would resist that amount of that triggering damage type. The really cool thing is, there's often times that I feel like Pathfinder's system is better, and then there's sometimes that I feel like 5th edition's system is better. If you have like fire resistance in 5th edition, and you walk into a burning building, you're still taking half damage every turn. Let's say the damage is 3. You're going to still take 1 damage every turn. In Pathfinder, if you have resistance to fire, and it's like resistance 5, you can stand in that burning building, it's dealing 3 damage a turn, and you could stand there forever. They both have their place, but the fact that neither system uses both, but this game uses both, it just opens up so much possibilities in design space for abilities. There's a simple fix that could be homebrewed into either system, but this is built with that in mind. Another really cool thing is both systems let you ready actions. 5th edition is simple. You take the ready action, you say what you want to do, you give a trigger. When the trigger happens, your action can happen. You can use a reaction to do the trigger. In Pathfinder 2e, I feel like it's more restrictive because you have to spend 2 actions. So 2 of your 3 actions to ready an action. Once you do that, your turn ends. So, I mean, ideally you're probably going to spend an action to do a thing first and then ready with the rest of your 2 actions. And then you have to spend your reaction to do that thing. So, in Pathfinder, it's taking 2 actions to ready a single action that then also takes your reaction. That's a huge cost to ready in Pathfinder. D&D, it's taking your action and then your reaction to do a thing. In this system, 4 actions, 4 action points. So, you want to spend 1 action to ready an attack. You spend that 1 action to ready the attack, and as far as I understand, I'll have to double check, but that's it. When it comes time, you just do it because you've spent the actions already. So the trigger happens. There's no action point cost associated with it. Are you using a reaction? Sure, but your reactions don't necessarily cost you action points if you've already spent them, as far as I understand. So that's really cool and freeing. But the even cooler part about readying actions in DC20 is you can ready multiple actions in the same turn. So picture this scenario, and this is like so cool to me. You're hiding in a room. You know enemies are likely to come into the room. You can ready 1 action to move, 1 action to attack, with the trigger when the enemy moves within the range of your movement. So, the enemy moves within range of your movement. You had ready to move and attack. So, as a reaction, outside of your turn, you move, attack. You could not do that in either system. You could not do that in D&D because you can only spend 1 action on your readied action. It could be to dash, it could be to move, but you could not move and attack. And you could do that in this system. Brilliant. Yes, the multiple reactions, amazing. So, I don't know if you were here for that part of it, Zanny, but I will just explain quick again. You end your turn, and you get your 4 actions back. If somebody triggers an opportunity attack, and you take that opportunity attack, they move away from you. Or actually, let's say this. You're already engaged with them in melee. They attack you. You use 1 action to use your shield to block. Okay, cool. And then they move away from you. You use another action to opportunity attack them. Cool. When it comes back to your turn, you only have 2 actions left. So it's completely balanced in that regard. In D&D and other systems, like, if you don't use your bonus action, don't use your reaction, but other people are, like, you're throwing off the action economy of the game. In this, everybody gets 4 actions. Everybody will use their 4 actions. Because another thing that I feel like is missing in Pathfinder is dodge, an action that you can take to, like, defend yourself. You can raise a shield if you have one. If you don't have one, though, you don't have that option. And there's no, like, defensive action that you can just take. I mean, you could take cover if you have cover, but it's all very situational. The fact that you have the ability to take a dodge action in this game, just like in 5th edition, is amazing. Just like in 5th edition, except it only costs 1 of your 4 actions, 2 if you want to take the D&D 5e equivalent of dodge. Cool. And then if you take those 2 actions, you still have half your turn. You could still move and attack. I said that earlier, but it's the same as a D&D turn, except you're benefiting from dodge. Now, it's not as effective as maybe some of the other things that you could do, but while I'm talking about turns, another thing that I heard Alan talk about, the dungeon coach, that was really cool as far as your turn goes. If there's a thing that you really need to do, really want to do, the example that he gave is there's somebody who's about to go through a door and they're gonna like attack somebody, like a prisoner or somebody that you want to protect, and you really want to help this person. You could move to them and then spend an action to give yourself advantage, spend an action to give yourself advantage 2, and then grapple them. And that grapple check is made rolling 3d20, taking the highest. Is that really powerful? Sure. But that's your whole turn. But you got to take the best chance to do the thing that you really wanted to do. Not as dynamic as a turn where you're like doing all this other stuff, but still really cool. And man, I'm going over big time, but this is just so cool. The other thing that I didn't talk about was the minor action aspect of the game. So I have a page number for that too, because this is really cool. Minor actions. So this is kind of like the free interacts that you get in 5th edition, except you get 2 of them. So you get your 4 actions and then 2 minor actions. And Alan has been very good with his creation of the system here, in that these are all interact type things that aren't super powerful, but they're things that I feel in Pathfinder 2e you get taxed for doing or penalized for doing, where drawing a weapon, retrieving a stowed item, opening a door, those are all actions in Pathfinder 2. Here, it's a minor action. It's free. And you can do 2 of them. So, it's not taxing, it's freeing. And I love that about this. And then if you want to do more things, you can spend an extra action point per thing beyond the first 2 free ones that you get. Now, the other thing that's really cool is movement. And again, in comparison to Pathfinder 2e, because once you end your move to do another action, that move action is gone. So, a turn in Pathfinder can be, I move to a door, I use an action to open a door, I move through the door. And that's your turn. Here, you could move to the door, use a minor action to open the door, continue that movement through the door, and still do a thing. You could move 2 squares towards an enemy, attack them, spend an action on a disengage so that the next opportunity attack against you, it's ignored, and move away from them. Move 2 squares back, because you can split your movement just like in 5th edition. So again, it's taking like the best parts of 5th edition, the free movement, the advantage, disadvantage, what have you, the free interacts, but increasing it to 2 interacts per turn. And then the best things from Pathfinder, like the multiple action economy and those kinds of things, and just one really amazing game system as far as I can tell. I haven't actually played it. I am going to be. Anybody that is watching, if you're a part of Roll With Us on Discord, I'll be in the Delves chat at 7 Eastern. You're welcome to come in and listen to the game. I only ask that you keep yourselves muted if you're not part of the party, just so that it doesn't interrupt the gameplay. Although I will say that it is a learning game, even for me. So if you have a question and we're discussing like mechanics or something, as long as you're not interrupting the players, because they would have I would have to consider them first, but you could, ask a question if you wanted to learn something. So, yeah, I guess that's about all the time that I have. But I could keep going about the system because it's really cool. Like I said, it is an alpha. It is available. If anybody's interested, actually, I should have left myself over there because if you look at the top of the page there, DC20 created by thedungeoncoach.com. If you go to his website, thedungeoncoach.com, the alpha is only $10. Oh, cool. Good luck with that. Good luck. But if you go to thedungeoncoach.com, the alpha for the game is only $10. It's over 150 page PDF of the rules. Comes with the module that I'm going to be running tonight. It's just a short adventure, but it looks really cool. It comes with guide for making monsters and a fillable PDF of the character sheet. So I think next time I'll probably take more time talking about the character sheet, character creation. I didn't really talk too much about the stats and skills, but like I said, I could go on for another hour just about the character sheet and creating a character. So, what time is the event tonight? It starts at 7 Eastern. I don't know what time it's going to get over. I can't take any other players at this point, but if you wanted to listen, or I could get you a Roll20 link to watch the game. There's no dynamic lighting, so you would be able to see everything that they see, I believe. I think if I'm wrong on that, Ali could correct me, but I think you could see everything since there's no dynamic lighting. But at the least you could listen. If you want a Roll20 link, if you want one, I'll get it to you. But I want to get it to you ahead of time. The game is in alpha. It's not supported by Roll20, so I had to hand make all the tokens, hand make all the character sheets. I don't have the time or the resources to add another player at this point. But yeah, if you want to watch it and listen, that's good. Yeah. Okay. I'll in Discord. I'll send you the link. Cool. All right, guys. Thank you. I again have gone over, but closer to the hour than the last couple times where I went almost 2. And now I have trees calling. They need to come out of their molds. So I will see Ali in a little bit. I do want to shout out to Ali though first. Thank you for helping get me set up today with OBS and Twitch and everything else. I couldn't do this without you. And thank you for joining me tonight, Ali. I appreciate it. See you guys later.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the content that you just saw, consider joining one of our games at startplaying.gaming/rollwithusDMs.